NTU World of Wisdom. Welcome to High Impact Thesis. In this podcast, we speak with researchers from various scientific fields to talk about the motivation, goal, and potential impact of their research. We also want to give you a sense of how a Ph.D. is carried out with an emphasis on the PH, the philosophical aspects involved in pursuing a Ph.D. Welcome to the HEAT podcast, where we talk with researchers from NTU and other parts of Singapore where they talk about their research work with us. So in today's episode, we have Hicret Atilgan, who talked to us about her research. Okay. So Hicret, you're very welcome to the HEAT podcast.
Thank you so much, Christopher. I'm happy to be here. And thank you for your efforts, despite all these restrictions, trying to make this work.
So we want this to be a casual conversation where you, being the person that knows the most about this particular topic, can talk to us in a casual way about the work you're doing, its importance for both specifically the way you're tackling it, but also for the whole society, or in a general sense, what will it do for society? So we hope that you'll be comfortable to share as much as you can beyond the questions that we are going to have. These questions are supposed to be guiding questions to sort of lead the conversation in some direction, but feel free to share as much info as you can that would allow our listeners to really understand what your research is about. Okay?
Okay. I think then maybe I can start first introducing myself. So my name is Hicret. I am a Ph.D. student under Neuroscience, Psychology, School of Social Sciences at NTU. So this is my third year. And I'm almost done with my projects actually. So I have completed 2 projects and then I am doing the third one. But then all of them are linked to each other, right? So, and we are just trying to kind of answer a question that we have in mind and then looking at from different perspective. And I will try to, so instead of maybe going into details of my research too much, because one thing is it's not really allowed because it's not published yet. And the second thing is because it might be too niche for general audience maybe. So I thought it might be best if I kind of talk about the general idea behind this research, right? So and then for that, I think I can start with introducing some of the concepts.
Okay, so I think you've answered the question that it's supposed to be question number 1, but just
because you told me just to go give as much as information you can. So I think I took it too literal. Okay, you can just stop me and then ask your questions.
So yes, so we start with just tell us what is your research about in layman terms. In other words, you meet someone on the streets and you only have a few minutes to share with them what your research is about. What do you tell them?
Okay. So the broader term would be the plasticity. So this means just not long ago, it was believed that the brain is kind of stable. So after a certain period of childhood, that it didn't change and every region was already established and there was no way to kind of change these regions or their functionalities. However, so in recent decades, it was discovered that there is this thing called plasticity, meaning that actually the brain can go through this rewiring, restructuring, when there is a need for adaptation. And these needs can be whether there's some kind of brain trauma, right? Some lesions, some problems, some accidents, and then brain has to come up different ways to make up for those lost regions. Or it can be just this sensory loss that people born with it, like blindness, deafness, congenital blindness or deafness, or later in the life that it happens, right? Or it's simply actually, those are kind of maybe extreme situations that it can be hard to understand, but actually it was discovered that every time you learn, actually your brain goes through this neuroplasticity, meaning that it just changes itself, right? It just creates these new roads, new pathways, new wires. And this is everything, all of us studying, learning, from physical activities, riding a bike, to just having this like really philosophical thinking. All these things are actually brain's way to adapt to this change, to new information. So this idea plasticity, actually, it was the kind of a really big change, big start, because as I said before, it was believed that the region, the brain, it was established. And then, especially with the blind research, so blind brain, when it was studied, it actually, there was lots of good contributions coming from that one, because the terminology, which is called this time cross-model plasticity, meaning that when there is a, because these blind people, they are not able to see, right? And then, before it was thought that, okay, this vision region, so-called vision region, is not operating anymore. However, it was found that actually it is operating, but it is used, so different senses like tactile, so the like touch or auditory hearing, they are using this region to their own benefits. So which is giving them even kind of these extra abilities, right? So, and which was really a good thing, because then we could understand that it is not disability, it is actually differently abled brains with the deafness or blindness. And then after this part, then of course this was a kind of a big buzz, right? Oh, like brain is able to use this region, which we thought was vision region, for other senses. Then the idea was, oh, okay, but is that plastic? Does everything change? Because it is good that brain is able to adapt, but think of it as kind of from architectural perspective, like a building. So you can design it, like you can decide to use the kitchen where normal kitchen is. You can suddenly make it a bedroom, maybe, if the necessity happens. But still, you shouldn't really change the pillars of the house, right? Because then it would just like crumble the whole structure. So of course, then this terminology came, which is supramodality, meaning that above modalities, above senses. So it was thought that there are regions that are even there is the sensory loss, let's say, because we are talking about blindness. So even when there is a loss of vision, these regions are not affected at all, because there are regions that go through the change when there is a sensory loss, but then there are these regions which are always stable. So those are called supramodality, which is that they are independent of senses, that they are these common regions that just processes information for all senses. And why this is important? This is very important for us, because actually the kind of biggest question neuroscientists are trying to figure out is how these neuronal mechanisms enable the cognitive functioning, right? So the things that we take for granted, let's say this integration between senses. So when I say an apple, how come you can both hear it and imagine it and even kind of remember the taste of it, right? If I ask you to like remember it. So this sounds maybe easy because you just keep doing it naturally, right? Your brain is able to do it. But if you think about it, it is just such a difficult integration. And we are still not sure, but by studying these kind of different concepts with all these new discoveries, that we are trying to come closer to the understanding that how brain integrates information to come up with this really complicated, advanced cognition.
Okay, so on the plasticity part, when it is, I want to understand the physical thing that's what's happening there. Is it that neurons in another part of the brain are any different than neurons in another part of the brain, or is it just the same things? And when you say this neuroplasticity, what physical change, if there is there any actual physical change in the neurons?
Okay, very good question. Actually, yes, because I mean it's easier to just kind of gloss over the term. But when you say plasticity, you can have it in various levels, right? It can be in synaptic plasticity, in synaptic level. It can be structural plasticity or functional plasticity. So what do I mean with those? So the easiest one, let's say, is the functional plasticity, in a way that, for example, normally in sighted brain, when you compare the blind and sighted, when you hear something, it would just go to the auditory area, which is in these parts. Okay. I mean, of course, the listeners can't see it, sorry. So it's like above your ears, right? So in this region, but in blind, it is actually seen that the pathway changes, these connections, right? So these neuronal connections. So it goes to the vision area first, then travels down to the audition. So we can say that it is mostly in the connectivity level. So we have these, I'm trying to find a way to make it less complicated. So, because anyway, when information is processed, even though we say it is a vision region, it just doesn't go there and stays there, right? So everything is connected. So it is processed mainly in that region, but then everything again travels to the frontal regions to make sense of it. And then also there's this language involved. You put this semantic knowledge to it, and then it becomes this kind of let's say the complex cognitive processing. But when this plasticity happens for the sensory loss, it is actually they are using not common pathways, stops that the sighted would use. So that is the way it is called rewiring. So they are just developing new pathways to make use of the vision region, because it is not getting this visual stimuli anymore. So they are using different information, processing it at this region, and then sending it back to, again, this common existing region in normal brain. But this is, let's say, it's a big change, big functional change. But if we are just thinking about learning, which everyone does, it is basically, the idea is, think of it as kind of the motorway, like this traffic, right? So when you learn something and then when you practice it, you strengthen those highways, and then they become, like, when they are a narrow road, they become actually bigger highways. The more you practice, the more you study, the more you learn, they actually become this kind of prominent highways. So the next time when you ask for an Uber, it is easier for it to travel to this highway, right? Because it already exists. It is so easy for you to carry this information or do this action. However, when you learn something new, suddenly you are actually building a new road. And then if you practice that thought or this action, then you just make these roads stronger, and then it becomes then you kind of new pathway, right? And in the same way, how you make a pathway stronger, you can actually make it so you can lose it as well. So the rule in the brain is, if you don't use it, you lose it kind of idea, that's why it's interesting. So when we first talk about neuroplasticity, everyone thinks that, oh, it is so cool, it is actually really helpful for the brain. But I will say it is kind of neutral, because yes, you can really pick up good habits, you can really learn good things, but actually you can also pick up bad habits as well, right? So this is also.
I think I'll ask a bit later on about, in particular, this idea of how we can leverage things that have already been strengthened, as in the strong highways you're talking about, but maybe they are. Can you then reuse that for other things?
Very good question.
Because it's already trained, right? It's very strong already, so you might as well use it.
Perfect question. Actually, that is why the whole idea, so there is this kind of neurotherapies, right? So this is the idea behind it. So interestingly, and this is, of course, these are all findings, but I mean, we are all scientists, right? Maybe like someone will find something else and we will just say, oops, sorry, we were wrong. However, I can say that with the MRI studies, neuroimaging studies, behavioral studies, all these are supported. So they are like strong evidences for all this neuroplasticity, the stuff that I am talking about. And for the findings, the interesting thing is now what is being discussed is, for example, if by, let's say, through dancing, somehow your math abilities can also improve, right?
Yeah, I mean, that would be great, right?
Exactly. That's so if they are like, if the common principles behind them is the same. For example, that is why with the physical activity, because you are improving these neurons in your, let's say, hippocampus, but then actually it is helping with this dementia kind of idea. So that is why actually it is really important to learn the functionality of a region and its connections. So the idea would be that even that region itself is damaged, you can find other ways to somehow rewire, like maybe it will be a longer road, so it can't really match with the normal function of it, but still it will be compensatory, right? It will be still that enable these people to perform some of those functions by rerouting the cable, let's say. So, or it is not for the disease. It can be that for learning way, for example, with this neurotherapies now, with the ADHD, anxiety, they are actually making this fine-tuned teaching materials for this specific group of children. So they can, if just one way is just too overwhelming for them to make for that region to function, it is too overwhelming for them. They are actually finding different ways to have the brain improve through other means, right? Like we talk, so like kind of by making them dance, actually you are somehow improving their special processing, and then through that maybe also the statistics is involved in that actually, because you are keeping statistics of rhythm like you subconsciously, right? So by doing those, you are somehow improving this statistical understanding, this like both spatial coding, and so it will be easier for them to maybe next time when they try to learn math again, they will be already it will be quicker for them to pick up the concepts, and then they will feel much more comfortable and then continue from that part.
All right. So I think we'll move away a little bit from there and go a little bit in specifics about what you do.
All right. So I think you gave us a good sense of neuroplasticity and why it's important. So we would like to move on now to what you personally do. So how does your research process looks like and on a day-to-day basis? And also what kind of tools you find helpful to carry out your research?
Mm-hmm. So with my research, I mean, I talk about kind of general concepts, so it can be kind of easier to describe my research. So I think we are at a good point for that now. So for my research, without being able to go into details, I will say that I am looking at the brain region, which is already kind of discovered, that it is a specific region. So it is, if you think about this graph theory a little bit, or, okay, let's find a better layman term for that. Maybe bus stops. So in this kind of traffic, the kind of these certain stops, which are stronger. So these nodes, these hubs. So there is this kind of region which is thought to have a specific function, but basically I am just trying to determine its functionality by asking clever questions. So by through having different hypotheses, and one of the hypotheses is definitely supramodality for that region for me. So we are assuming that region is not only responsible for that function only in vision, but also in touch and probably for audition as well. Or it is multisensory basically. And then what this means actually, if I rephrase it again, So supramodality would be just so the cross modality is what happens when there is a lack of vision, so how brain changes, and supramodality is what stays same even when there's a loss of vision. So what doesn't get affected, what gets affected, right? So my theory is this region is so important that even when there is no vision, this region still develops despite regardless of vision or any sense, because this is kind of a really common important hub, because everyone uses it, so it needs to be there, right? For that, one of the ways, there is this machine called TMS, transcranial magnetic stimulation. So that TMS machine is actually able to target a specific neuronal regions in the brain, right? Neuronal populations. And we are able to manipulate those neurons' activation. So either excite them more, so just say like, oh, we are having a party, make some noise so we can pick it up more, right? Because it's like so deep in the brain, I need to excite them to be able to see what's going on. Or it is we just make them really silent so they can't really function. This is temporarily, right? So whatever we do, that's why it is invasive. So we are just kind of creating this temporary change in the neuronal population, be it some temporary lesion or excitation. And we are by doing that, we are basically able to differentiate this group, this region from the others. And then by making participants do some tasks, because keep in mind, if I am muting their functionality, temporarily they are not able to perform, then I am able to understand through the participants' performance whether this region was essential for this function or not. Okay. So let me give an example, right? Let's say you use this region for singing, and I am stimulating this region. So if I am at the right region, which this neuron's responsible for you to sing, and then I send this this stimulation, so this electrical induction to your brain. So if I am inhibiting those neurons, meaning that it is not suddenly you stop singing, it is not that dramatic, because brain is perfect, like it will always find a way. But because now you can't use the main ones, it will actually reduce your, probably you will kind of like forget it, right? Like it will take more effort for you to be able to sing. Like normally it is such an instinctive thing. You just go like blah, blah, blah. But then it will actually be like, oh wait, what was the words maybe? Like, oh, what was the tune? So depending on the region I am doing. So basically I am interrupting the function of that region, right?
So you mean that you can do this right now? So can I do it to you then?
Yes,
accidentally?
Yes.
Or that is to say, can someone do it to another person and they wouldn't know it?
Oh, okay. No. I mean, you would realize it because you will be sitting under the machine.
Yeah.
But I think what you are trying to ask is, because, I mean, I gave kind of like a really, the example is, it will be easier for you to tell that whether something is happening or not with this example, right? But actually, in my version, because it is subtle, so the subject, the participants themselves, they are not really able to tell which region that I played with, right? Mm-hmm. So we only see it with their reaction times, and then when we do this analysis. So it is not that prominent, it is not that obvious.
Okay. Can it really target like very specific regions with such high precision, the transcranial magnetic stimulation?
Okay, very good question as well. So for that one, what we do, my study is called fMRI. Oh my God, I forgot my study. Okay, it's called targeted aided. So this is the fMRI supported TMS. So meaning that first, in the first step, I actually use fMRI. So MRI is, you know, from the hospitals, this MRI, you go into this machine, right? So when it is fMRI, so meaning functional imaging, so it is that they perform this simple task inside the MRI machine, and we are able to locate this region for each individual through this task. Because when they perform this task, the brain somehow, let's say, layman term, it kind of highlights, right? So there's this blood rush to that region. So then we know that this region is responsible for this function. Then I can, because I have this specific location for each participant, then when they come for TMS, it is already ready. So I already know the region, which region to stimulate. So it is almost becomes kind of like this Prisma game, so this kind of like almost a video game, because I can already see their brain, the region. So basically I just kind of find the specific target. I hold this coil. So the TMS machine has this coil. So I specifically find this perfect coordinates and then this perfect like bullseye, and then send the stimulation through this region that way.
Oh, so do you have like deep access to the deep-seated areas of the brain, or is it mostly on the outer regions?
Yes, another good question. So, unfortunately, the deep regions of the brains are still an enigma for neuroscientists, because although there are new ways that the researchers are trying to come over this problem, right? They are like trying to find different ways. But still, both for fMRI, TMS, our best bet is the places close to the surface, so your skull, right? So in this midbrains, the deep regions, it will be just, I mean, it's too unknown. It is too far away. Because also imagine this kind of, if we think about the brain like an ocean, let's say, like a water source, right? So the deeper you go, the more actually you lose this information, you lose contact with you know how for the divers, there is this, I think certain meters they can go, right, with their oxygen tank and everything. Like after a while, it just stops working. So this kind of idea. So this is basically because it's so the more it needs to travel inside, the more it will lose its power. This is the idea. And then there is this safety measurements. So we can't exceed certain threshold for safety. So then it is not really able to reach this neuronal population. So the closer it is to the surface, the better we can know its impact, the power, and we can control those, because those are really important. So it is not kind of random. It needs to, even before it comes to this stage of where you want to manipulate this region, there are lots of calculation goes into which kind of protocol is the best, the direction of the induction, all these things. So it is actually very complicated procedures all over, right? So the less you know about the protocol, then you wouldn't know, maybe you are reaching, but because you basically don't know the, let's say, the specifics of the impact you are trying to achieve, right? Because basically you can't really understand the deeper it goes. So whatever you find, you wouldn't be able to make a good causation relationship. It can be correlational, but we are trying to achieve the causation, not the correlation.
And so TMS is stands for
transcranial magnetic stimulation.
And so that is electromagnetic induction. That's how you stimulate the different regions. And I'm wondering whether you can do it using drugs. Is that something that people do?
Oh, I mean, you by just targeting a specific region by these drugs, right?
Yes, drugs or hormones or whatever, things that can go make the changes, but without you using electromagnetic induction.
Honestly, I'm not really aware if that is being done, because I would assume that with the drugs, the problem would be because the blood-brain barrier issue, like the blood that is circulating your body and then it goes to the brain, but actually there are filters and everything. So it needs to be really specific, which you can design, but it will be, and I am not good on those things, but it will be too many things to control with the biological aspects of it, right? Because this time it is actually your body breaking it down to its elements. So I don't know how honestly, if there are drugs, they are trying to come up for Alzheimer and everything. I am assuming they are trying to find some ways. But I would assume the difficulty is just sending the right, the ingredient to the right location. So how can they do that? I am not sure. Because even with the brain, when we talk about these specific regions, blah, blah, but keep in mind, sometimes it is not the region itself, it is the connections it makes, creates the difference. So it might be, so you can target maybe the building, the bus stop, but maybe you need to intercept the traffic that is leading to the building. You see what I mean? So it is not the building itself, but actually you should stop the traffic. So because these things are really not really known, it's still being studied. So I'm not sure if they allow it to be tested on humans yet. Maybe they are trying it with the animals.
Okay, that's fine. I'm just wondering what are the main ways to change.
So you basically work primarily with fMRI and TMS, right? Together. Okay. But I wonder what advantage would TMS provide over fMRI? Why don't you just use MRI and focus primarily on using MRI for doing your...
okay. So why we need to combine these two is basically because they have different, they give you different abilities, let's say, right? So because with the MRI and fMRI, we can record, so we can have, let's say with the MRI, have a natural photo of the brain. And then with fMRI, we can kind of get this activation photo, let's say, but you can't, so it is just taking a photo, right? So you can't manipulate the brain. So you can't make brain do something from outside. It is just, you can give them some tasks, but again, it is just, so this is called like imaging, right? So it is just, you just visualize the stuff, but you can't manipulate it. So TMS gives us this ability to play with it, let's say. Manipulate some, so still non-invasive. I'm stressing that one so that my potential participants don't run away. So it is still non-invasive, but yes, it gives us, so you are able to, let's say, directly do something to the brain. So it is not just visualization, just watching it, but this time playing with it a little bit. Yes.
So it is non-invasive, or it
is non-invasive. So the invasive,
by that you simply mean you don't open their brain, but you actually do get in.
Yeah,
right?
Because invasive ways are those are like kind of scary pictures, but maybe you have seen it with the monkeys where they put electrodes, right? So they just kind of have this surgeries but then thanks to them, this is how TMS machines are created, or how we have this vast knowledge about the brain is through, it's unfortunate, but that through these animal studies and invasive ways, right? Or in previously, it was actually lesion studies. So let's say somehow someone has some lesion or some accident and then some part of brain is damaged. So whether after they die, they kind of take the brain, dissect it before, and then try to see what's going on. So to make some connections. They say, oh, okay, this person was having these symptoms when they were living, and then we look at the brain, this region is missing, so they try to match it. But then the problem with those lesion studies was that because when lesion happens, it is usually not targeted specific region. It just spills over other regions, right? So you can never really be sure if it directly is matching with this specific region or not. But with TMS, what it gives this ability, and because it is non-invasive, because you are not opening the brain, you are not protruding anything to the brain, but also because, like I said, through the protocol we apply, it is, for us at least, like the study I'm doing, it is temporary, right? So it doesn't create these long-term effects.
What is protocol that you're talking about?
Sorry?
When you say protocol, you're talking about...
Oh, okay. I am talking about the TMS protocol we are following. And so because the TMS has, depending on, because I can talk about our measurements specifically, so let me try. So depending on, I can say this. So there is this, for example, it's idea about this, like the mechanism, but there's a single pulse, repetitive pulse. So depending on what kind of pulses you send to the brain, you can try to achieve different results. You know how I talked about difference between excitation or inhibition? This is how you can achieve it. So depending on what you choose, how the threshold, the region, the direction of the pulse, the coil you hold, so you can actually create different effects.
Okay, so the patterns you make are is the way you communicate with the brain.
Yeah, because, for example, I keep saying ours is temporary, right? But actually, TMS right now is being used for depression therapy, for example. And that one is aimed to make it long-lasting. But they have different protocols. And then these subjects, they go through this more still control, but kind of intense version. So they go probably every day, right? So they get this kind of different doses. And then at the end, after a while, after a couple of, I think around 6 to 10 sessions, they are actually, this long-term plasticity happens. So because you keep sending these, you keep, let's say, playing with the same neuronal circuit, so you are actually developing this healthy connections, and then through that, or breaking the bad ones. So through that, actually, the rate is very good. So now it is FDA approved, and then these patients, they are able to live without depending on the drugs, right? So they don't need to have drug therapy anymore. So they can actually be cured of their depression and then start living healthy lives through that.
Okay. Right.
Or there is also this another one, which is trying to be done for dementia, right? This is also like kind of the biggest obstacle, they say, that waits for 21st century, because through health improvements, actually we are living longer, so probably we are seeing more effects of dementia happening. So now there is this kind of good buzz around it to make it stop, or maybe have preventive measures to have a late start at least, right? So now like it doesn't start early. So then for this one as well, they are doing this TMS again, and but unfortunately that one success rate is still low. So the effect is seen that they are able to have a good memory, kind of retain or just kind of have an improvement with their memory, but it is unfortunately temporary. So now they are trying to come up with the ways to make it like they do with the depression therapy. They are trying to find maybe a good protocol or good region to stimulate so that the effect can be long lasting.
Oh,
I remember there is also another technique they are developing also for improving neuroplasticity or for different kinds of therapies, including ADHD. That one was neurofeedback, right? You have an idea about that?
I
Like-
think with the ADHD, they are doing this basically because also with the ADHD, it is just used kind of the really general umbrella, right, term.
Oh, okay.
But it is also, that is why these neurotherapy centers are actually becoming somehow good, like famous, good to go places for people as well. I mean, to that being said, there are also lots of people who are misusing it, right? I'm sure you see,
Okay.
like if you
Yeah.
type into YouTube or Google, there are lots of, oh, I will change your brain kind of thing. And
Yeah.
they can be fraud. But then in the real good clinics, I think the good thing is they try to, so they make you do these tasks, right? Lots of different tasks, tuned to the way that to understand which region in your brain might be having a trouble, which connections, right? Because
Okay.
of course, there are, after studying many people, you kind of have a general idea what is the common the regions, common problems. But it can be also, depending on the individual, it can show differences, right? So you can't just say that, especially for something like ADHD, because it involves many regions. So you can't just say, oh, okay, just kind of give same drug to everyone. Actually, maybe the good thing with neuroscience is it is going to the way of more making it specified to the individual's need. So with this version, by making you do these tasks, then if they identify which of the regions in your brain maybe need more practice, and then what kind of strengthening those needs, and then, but they actually combine this both stimulation, but actually making the task action itself as well. And sometimes it doesn't even have to be the TMS, any kind of stimulation. It can be as simple as, for example, for the lesion studies, someone who has some kind of a stroke and they are not able to really use their left hand anymore. And consciously, of course, this is now easier. You just keep picking up everything with your right hand. So they say simply this kind of physiotherapy more than neurotherapy, but that's actually neurotherapy. They just basically have this lady just kind of control the arm, so they just tie the arm, right? Like they can't use the left arm, the right arm, sorry. So then they have to force their body and then by default their brain to use the left. And then by every day, maybe 15 minutes at the beginning, then half an hour, then 1 hour, by keep using this hand, forcing it, you are telling your brain, you are giving the message that I still need this arm, right? So just don't get comfortable and don't lose the connections. And although I know you are happy you have the right, but don't trust on that only, because I will still use my left arm. So you are basically convincing your brain through your actions. And you are just saying that, okay, please make the right connections, strengthen them, because I will keep using my left one. So this is physical example, but think of it as every kind of, even for abstracting, so learning a new language, doing something new, you are basically just convincing your brain that I will do this or I won't do this anymore. So please just either lose it or just make it stronger.
All right. Hicret, now I think we're going to move on to more speculative arena. That's to say, it might not be directly your line of work, but because you're in this field, we feel you might have an opinion about some concepts and ideas. Okay, so I'm going to ask a few that I think are interesting to think about. One is you said that you have this protocol that you can tell the brain to do some things. How far into the future do you think we would have the ability to say, for example, tell the brain to do physical things like create, so there is a brain and then you want to talk to the genes to produce some proteins, for example. I suppose right now that's not possible. Is that something that might be possible in the future?
Oh.
Where you,
so you are talking about somehow consciously manipulating, so almost having this kind of conscious control over biological kind of even
right.
turning on some mutation on and off. Whoa.
Right, because
okay.
if you are...
That one is meta. Okay. That's interesting. I mean, I think it's all, it's kind of, first of all, probably it will take kind of a long time, because Ahmet already told me that you will have someone who is going to talk about this brain connectivity and everything. So I'm sure he will be able to delve into this stuff more. But I will say that for as much as that we talk about brain does this and that, but I would say that still it's just, everything is so new. Everything is just such a baby steps that we don't even, we are trying to understand the regions, the connection, but it just seems kind of far away to imagine that we can map the brain, meaning that we can map the regions, their connections, and it is just kind of, it's not only one connection, so the harder part, again, like your guest will tell you, but it is just, you see the highway, right? So let's say that's the connection, but how do you know if it is going from A to B? So you see it on the highway, right? But don't imagine as cars, like, so you can see the front and back. So it is, you are just seeing something moving maybe. So do you know if it is going from A to B and then coming back? Is it his first run? Does it stop there and doesn't come back? Something else comes back? It is just, you know, like, imagine we need to figure out the both A point, B point, their function, their connection, what is traveling in between, what is the first stop, last stop. So it is just so complicated right now. If you can, but in theory, if you can maybe map out all these things, can it give you a chance to manipulate it from outside, like how we do just maybe, let's say, this neurochips or something, maybe, but then to get it to the level that through brain source, turning genes on and off, I really don't know. Like you said, it's like too much. I mean, of course, like in one sense, I just want to say, why not? Let's try it. But then also, of course, if you are thinking scientifically, just like, you know, with all the money flow and everything, would how to explain it, and then also there's this ethical concerns. Should we really do it? You know, should we, even if you can, should you really have the power to play with someone's genes that way? I don't know.
And so currently we have not fully mapped out the brain. Is that right?
Yes,
there are some regions that we don't know yet, and also specifically, you said that at a certain point, the brain or a region of the brain realizes that there is no more light information that I should be processing, then I can now go on and be used for other things.
Yes.
So there is a module that currently does that detection, or how does it work? Does it just realize that I haven't done it for a long time, then I should change, or is there a specific region?
Because, so when we are born, we have the highest number of these synapses, right? So let's say neurons, the capacity, neuronal capacity. So there is this critical period in our childhood. So it is both, again, lots of discussions, nature, nurture, your genetic blueprint. But whatever it is, basically your neurons are, so with the ones, so they go through this kind of synaptic pruning. Imagine it as kind of branch, right? So imagine, So imagine, you know how they make this kind of shape out of this, how you call them? Bushes, right? So yeah, you have this kind of bush, right? And they sometimes make, let's say, rabbit out of it. So imagine this kind of situation. So it is kind of this lots of branches, and then like the bushes. And then so if it gets so it is already, for example, for the vision, it is already pre-programmed to become a, let's say, vision neuron. However, if it doesn't get the information at this critical period, then it says, oh, okay, I am not getting any visual stimuli. Okay, guys, let's take the other role, because like our main role might be this, but this is for the cross-modal ones, right? Because again, there are lots of different neuronal types. We talked about supramodal ones, cross-modal ones. So, I mean, is a caution. So don't think this is for all the neurons. I'm just giving kind of an example of some type. So then after this critical period, so that's why with the blind studies, we have a group called congenital blinds and late blinds. So congenitally blind ones, the changes the brain goes is amazing, right? It is just really profound, really impressive, really interesting. But with the late blind, for example, because after the critical period, which is usually depending on the function, it changes. But let's say around the age 8 to 10, right? So after this period, already the roles are divided. So it is harder for brain to go through the change. It still happens because we keep learning, right? Until we die. So but these big ones, the ones that we called cross-modal, like really big impactful ones, they happen less and less and less. Mm-hmm. So when you compare the congenital blind, late blind, and the sighted ones, you would see that with the late blind, some of the functions, the way the brain works is similar to the sighted, and some of the way is similar to the congenital blind ones. But it is actually really helpful, because then we can see that which regions need this critical period, that you have to give this information to them at this time, and then later in life it is actually not really too helpful, let's say. And then which information is actually can always be developed, like which region functionality can always be changed regardless of the age. So it doesn't have this kind of critical period.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so if a child is born and they're left in the dark, let's say for the first 5 years of their life, it means that what is no information? How do they interpret no information? So for example, just be I'm not receiving light, that's it? Or
let's say blindfolded, right? Because even there's no, okay, maybe pitch black kind of chamber might work, but still they can maybe see shades or something. So I'm just gonna imagine that you blindfolded them, right? Like you're an awful person, you put them in somewhere, blindfolded them for 5 years. So still 5 years, even after that it can develop. But I would say even with even you don't even need the child example. What we can say, for some people they are congenitally blind, but actually it was not due to anything wrong with their brain, right? It is just with the hardware. So let's say some of their neurons between eye tract and these things, it was damaged. Okay. So this cable. And then through the medical advancement, actually it happens with the cataract patients mostly. So in these childs who are born in these undeveloped countries, because they can't get any medical treatment. So actually by their babies to, let's say, until 15 years old, they live in this darkness. But actually it is a really simple procedure now, right? So they can even do it like in 10 minutes. So then when they look at these people who can regain their sight, this is what is interesting. You know how I told you that neuroplasticity is actually can be both good and bad? Interesting thing is, it was found until, this is actually my master's study as well, that I looked at the structural functional changes. And then this was really interesting, because before it was not known how big the change this blind brain goes. the people thought when your eyes suddenly open, you will be the happiest person in the world, right? Oh, I can see, like, perfect, everything is fine. But actually, these patients who regained their sight, it was really high number, like 70. I don't want to give too much numbers, like not to be statistically wrong. But then it was interesting that these patients, they actually suffered from depression after they regained their sight, which was baffling. Because why suddenly they are unhappy? And then most of them, there are even anecdotes that why, even though they can see now, they choose to wear blindfolds, to go back to that state. And then it was baffling why this is happening. Which is why, after understanding this brain changes, as if, how the baby is newly born, we try to not to subject them to the too much light, too much noise, because it is overwhelming. So the same idea. So you have to, the scientists realize that because it is such a big change, and then now brain having this new information, you have to ease the brain into it, right? So you can't suddenly open their eyes and say, okay, now see, right? Now let there be light and then be happy. So you can't do that. So you have that is why there is also this neurotherapy we talked about. Actually, now when a patient has the sight recovery operation, they make them go through this little doses of seeing in a day, right? They start maybe 1 minute at the beginning, then 5 minutes, 10 minutes every day, until the brain has enough time to rewire itself. And it can do. And then what is seen is, this is also still a really new research, but then it is seen that, because now it is just re-plasticity, right? So it already went through the plasticity, through blindness. Now we are just reversing it, this kind of reverse plasticity. And interestingly, again, depending on the period, how long they were blind, this critical period, blah, blah, blah. But some of these plasticities are totally reversed. So they become as if they were never blind, some of the function, the same with the sighted. But for some changes, some plasticities, they are not reversible, which is really interesting as well, right? So all these things give us this information of the nature of this region, this neuronal population, how they react to the change, which ones are reversible, which ones are not. So then you can actually develop programs, neurochips, whatever you want to do with that information, you can do an informed design, right? So it wouldn't be random.
Yes. So I think last question, very general, is in your line of work or the kind of research you're doing, when the biggest breakthrough, whatever you tell us what that would be, if that were to come about, what kind of society would we be looking at? If the research you're doing and the breakthroughs you're seeking were to come about, what kind of world are we looking at?
I mean, as someone who loves science fiction, I think I always imagine that, in the Matrix, if you watched it, there is this scene where Neo goes, I know Kung Fu. They put this really old cassette tapes and then press, and then he just kind of learns years of information in seconds. His eye goes like this, and then he just says, I know Kung Fu, and then he's able to do it. So I think in really extreme version, I can imagine a way that you can, if somehow downloading an information from a trained brain. When I say downloading, kind of figuring out the coding of this connection. So somehow, if you can implement that information to almost kind of like Bluetooth maybe, or just kind of the information passing. So if you could do that, so imagine if you could share information, right? If I could share all the knowledge I have and then kind of pass it to you and then you download it, that will be really interesting. Would it create I mean, of course, I'm just talking about extreme, right? There are lots of things in play that it would make it not possible. But then it will be interesting, actually, would it create that when everyone has this almost common knowledge and then you build on it, or it is just too much knowledge, it actually makes your brain crash down. I don't know what's going to happen with that. But although, I mean, I'm saying it's science fiction, but actually it is somehow being tried. For example, with the mice, it was interesting. So there was this study. They put this mother mouse, right? And then she goes along this maze, and then they gave her the electric shock at some points, right? So when she makes a maybe wrong turn, something, and then she's shocked at that gate, but that gate is safe, and then she knows how to go out. So then they dissect her brain, like take all this, like kind of look at the region and everything, this coding, and then they put this information to her baby, right? So the new mouse. So they put this mouse to this maze, which this mouse has never been into this maze before. But then it was able to find the exit without going through this like shocking part, right? So it behaved as if it knows the route and the places where they give it a shock.
Okay.
So I mean, I need to refresh my memory on the specifics on that one, but I think then it didn't really live long. It was just kind of so that's why it can't really be tried on humans yet. But it's still interesting that they were able to transfer this memory.
I see.
I see.
Very interesting. I mean, because ultimately that's what we're doing as a society, right? Passing information to one another, whether it is schools, whether through school, whether through church, through religion. It's like a section of society passing information in a section of society. So if that could be done faster, then I think it'll be pleasant.
Exactly. But then we should maybe keep in mind that I totally agree. That's really interesting. That, like we talked about actually with the plasticity, that there are already these blueprints, that genetic blueprints we get from our parents, or even like you said, our parents being that the society, nature, nurture. But what would be interesting to think about is actually, because there is this accumulation of knowledge, and then also it is just the experience. Sometimes, I mean, time is a really good teacher as well. So I'm just thinking that when we talk about, because again, keep in mind that the question is this neuronal processes, how they transfer into this cognition. But maybe we are thinking about cognition as raw information, salt information, but it is maybe just, it is probably combination of everything, right? It is the time, your age, even your biological factors, your hormones. So maybe if you have done, let's say it is possible to have this information much earlier in a kind of in a bigger raw version, but would you be still able to really absorb it, process it rightly? Do you see what I'm trying to say? Maybe, I mean, it is just probably, it is just it is the right age, right hormone, right experiences we need to go through to really make that connection click for this cognition, right? So maybe if it is a kind of in a big package way, it will be just salt information, but it wouldn't have this correct episode. So it will be more like a computer, but without this human touch to it.
Let's wait and see. Let's see what happens when it happens.
Speaking of blindness and neuroplasticity, I just remember that I've seen before that some blind people are able to, like, they have a very impressive ability to use echolocation to navigate their environment. They make some clicking sounds and they can recognize, okay, there's a door, there's a tree, there's a car. It's really impressive. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. That's why there are these devices to make it easier for people who have sensory loss to transfer this information, right? So kind of to train their brain, like you said, through echolocation or through touch. And once actually there's, I think it's Ahmedi's paper, so there are really nice studies which are showing that once you train these individuals, let's say blind person with these sounds, they are actually, they perform the same way with the sighted. So they are so good as if like not being able to see doesn't make any problem with their navigation. But it is not that they are so good that they are at par with the sighted. Actually, for some of the functions, they get even better. For example, one of them is understanding the fast speech. So with the blind individuals, they are actually able to, so while sighted can't understand this speech after certain speed, but with the blind, they can actually still decipher this fast speech, right? So they get better at it. So the same thing, for example, whether be it through braille reading or it is something that their brain just develops after going through the sensory loss, they also get better with this touch discrimination as well.
That's why they use that touch.
Exactly.
I don't know what's the language. What's the name?
The braille reading, right?
Braille reading.
Yes.
Okay.
So I guess this was my last question, but I'm wondering whether it is, the fact that they have this brain region that was initially being used for light and now is being used for some other task. Now they are better at some other task because they're better at some other task because some brain region has been released, right? But you and me as people, we have different amounts of things to do, so to say, right? Like, so does that mean that different individuals would have different I don't know if the word is amount of their brain used, because it looks like every brain is assigned a task and all of us have different lives. So do some people who do less have the capacity to do
okay. Like
more?
I see. So it's almost, you are thinking some kind of, if there's this, from computer terminology, if I'm right, so it kind of, if there's this CPU devoted to one thing, and then if you have this capacity, if you wouldn't be able to do more, and if you already have something less, so it gives you this kind of more freedom to maybe do other stuff.
Right.
Is that your question?
To be very, very good at some other tasks because you're doing, so to say, less. So for blind people, we know exactly what that is being dedicated, where that is coming from. Okay, they're not processing light anymore, so then they use it to get better at some other thing. But for every day, we also have different tasks that are tasking in different ways. So then, can we use then those leftovers?
There are theories definitely talking about this, how one sense can interfere with the others. And for example, that is why vision is thought to be dominant sense, right? Because we are so vision focused. Like, from the moment you open your eyes, like you wake up, you just keep using it. Rather, whatever you do, even when you touch something, it is still there. When you listen to something, it's still there. So for the sighted people, vision would be the dominant sense, and then which is sometimes why it can interfere, because the theory is that one of the theories that they say that there is the race of senses, so they just try to be the one, like they are trying to take the attention away from the other, like they are like, no, I will process this, you don't interfere, but the other one is saying like, no, I want to process it as well. So imagine it's something like this. So which is why to heighten your experiences, how the last years this eating in the dark became famous, right? So because the idea is that because you are not using your vision anymore, now this spoiled dominant vision is not to be able to do anything, then the other senses can use their full capacity. So that's why maybe you are paying more attention to smell, to think that you eat. So suddenly you are thinking that the food tastes much better. But it is actually just because basically you are able to put your full focus to that sense instead of vision getting interfered with it. Does that make sense? So
yeah. I think that's the direction I want to do.
So on that sense, probably this is actually a good question. We can make it more generalized. That is why probably one of the reasons that, how people go, we need to unplug. I mean, this is the one of the things for your brain to reduce stress a little bit. I would say that just especially now we are with the phones, the computers, everything. We are always giving some kind of input to our brain, right? All the time. So we are actually somehow it is just always we are not giving our senses time to relax, especially the vision. So that is why I think it became more and more people are looking for some kind of relaxation, right? Be it some religious ritual, be it some kind of meditation, or basically just going into the mountain. But basically, what we are all trying to do is just have this sense of calm. And this is what is sleeping. So giving time to your brain to process and then calm down and then put the right things into place. But because we are so bad at it, we are not even careful with our sleep. And then at the sleep, it already has lots of things to do. So sometimes it can't do the additional stuff. So you really need to time just unplug, even kind of maybe probably close your eyes. Sometimes just listen to the nature. Don't do anything. So I think the next big thing will be just, let's today not do anything and then just relax. And then for our mental health, it will be this kind of situation.
Okay. All right.
So yeah, I think we spoke quite a bit about your research and your academic life in general. So now I would like to move to something beyond that, which is what you personally like to do in your free time. Like, what are some interests that you have beyond the research and neuroscience and so on? So what do you like? What kind of activities you like to engage in your free time?
Okay, so I mean, I do lots of stuff, and probably I don't do any of them fully, right? So with those things, I am kind of, I don't know, like I have this, they say monkey hunger in Turkish. I don't know, probably it doesn't translate to the English, but basically just being fascinated with everything, but not doing anything fully. So one of them is I really like learning different languages, right? So somehow I think probably it makes me feel better because it is as if I am doing something for fun, but it is at the back of my mind, but this is still really useful. It's just something like good for my brain, I don't know, to communicate with people. So I do that. So I have this, when I say I do that, that's why I said do it half. So I have these language apps, I have lots of languages that I started. I know all of them, maybe 15%, but not further than that. But I'm just thinking that I am opening the pathway, right? I am creating the road. One day I will make it stronger. It is just creating the road. So then I really love, so I have 3 brothers. So we play lots of video games with them. So now we actually, when it is weekend, we do this online gaming together. And it is just more like for social interaction as well, right? Just like but
it's quite important. Yeah.
Yes, it is also good for your actually eye balance thing, again, as a kind of excuse to playing games. It is good actually for your brain if you do it in moderation. And then I love puzzles. I can really get obsessed with the puzzles. That's why it is dangerous, because if I start and I do this 1,500 once, I can do it for 3 days. And then just eating in the middle and then doing it again. I get crazy about them. So, and I love painting, but I am so bad at it. What I found the way is that I found in here this cool thing called paint by numbers. So it actually tells you which color to paint where. Then you really have a nice picture at the end. I love it. So I do those things. But I think the biggest one is that I really love nature. So, and as much as I can, and I have a really good friend that I met here. So with her, we try to encourage each other to try different experiences. So each month we try this. One of us planned something big, right, in Singapore. I don't know whether we go to this, is it called pottery? Oh, how you call it?
Pottery?
Like, yes,
Making
pottery. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, we do this kind of thing. We go to Snow City. I don't know, any kind of random activity.
Okay.
Things that we wouldn't do. We just push each other to do it. And just go to the walks and everything. As you can see, I do lots of stuff. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I forgot. Most important thing. I love reading and I can read all. So you know how people say trash TV? I do trash reading. So I find the most bizarre, like random bad book. I mean, I don't want to call it bad because someone wrote it, but I mean, it is just, I don't know. It is, I mean, it is bad. I'm sorry, but it just gives me so much joy to read those books as well. So under a tree in the park in Singapore, you can see me reading some random bad book and laughing about it.
You have a wide range of activities, I can see. Yeah.
So Hicret, it's been amazing talking with you. I personally have learned a lot. I'm very interested in the brain myself. I mean, who wouldn't be, right? Since we have this thing with us. So I really did learn a lot, and I think I'll definitely follow up offline on some of the topics that we've covered here. But we very much appreciate your time and your candidness about what you know and what the future of this field is like.
Yeah,
so
thank you
very
so much for me as well. It is lovely that you were both engaged and then you really asked really good questions for me to talk about the things more in detail, because I love this so much and there's so much to cover. So I can go kind of off rails sometimes, too deep, or sometimes like not deep at all. So thank you for guiding the talk as well. And like you said, actually for both of you and also for the listeners, if they want to have a chat again, just have follow-up questions, they can always contact me. And also they can come to the lab, which is at the HSS building, 6th floor. It's called NTU Touch Lab. So you are all welcome.
NTU Touch Lab. That is HSS stands for?
I think Humanities and Social Science.
Okay, but
that's
the name of the course.
So NTU Touch Lab. So
exactly. It is the building next to the hive.
All right.
So listeners, if you want to check Hicret's work out or talk with her, that's the place in HHS NTU Touch Lab. Okay. Do you have a Twitter or some account that people will follow you on, or anything that you would like to have people?
With social media, I am like really old school. I am like a granny. I only have this ResearchGate account. They can see my published articles. If they're interested, they can have a read through. So, I mean, if they just search my name and surname, luckily, it's actually a really rare name. So, I am the first one comes up in Google. Yay, for now, I am the only one. So, if they just search my name and surname and then put it in the ResearchGate, I should be the first one coming up.
All right, I think we'll have your name in the episode title somewhere.
Okay, thank you.
Or description, so people will be able to see the name there. Okay, so thanks a lot, and that's it for today.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.